I think I've complained to David. I'm continually surprised by like gay guys I meet who in their public presentation like have like nice corporate or art world jobs and who find things that I say in print like bad, but who love Red Scare, who love Perfume Nationalist, who love like things that to me are like, this is like straight up MAGA chud, like Nazi garbage. But if you can enjoy it from a little bit of distance, then it's like, you know, and I do think there's a kind of, I mean, to me, like Milo is like, that's exactly how all gay guys are in my mind. Like that is what being a gay guy is like, you know, you get too real at Thanksgiving, you get a little drunk, you know, you say something, you know, off color. Like when he got canceled the first time for being like, oh yeah, I got felt up by a priest and I loved it. That to me is like, that's very normal.
I think
like
that's something like I've had more black men in me than a Kardashian or something.
Yeah, that's like, come on, that's like RuPaul season 3. That's just a normal way for gay guys to joke. But I think people in a certain like lanyard wearing corporate sphere or in academia like get cut off from that. And I am surprised like continually by meeting like sort of good boy eunuch gays who like don't get to joke that way. And yeah, I mean, I would love to make the case that like you can be a classic gay guy and not Hitler. That would be my public service announcement.
This is Off Christopher Street, the podcast where we look into the archives of the gay magazine Christopher Street as a window onto the gay life of the past and the gay discourse of the present. I'm David Sessions, and I am joined as always by my co-host and fellow historian, Blake Smith. And this time, the writer Daniel Lefferts joins us to talk about right-wing gays and why they alternately fascinate and horrify us. In particular, we talk about the 1980s conservative activist Terry Dolan, who by day was coordinating the Reagan Revolution, working with emergent Christian right leaders like Jerry Falwell, and by night was picking up young men in D.C.'s gay bars. Dolan appeared on the August 1982 cover of Christopher Street, Sleeping with the Moral Majority, along with an article that described the power gaze of the Reagan universe and Dolan's hookup with a Library of Congress employee. We talk about the history of gay men who have put their attractions to money and political power ahead of their sexual identity, and how we react even now to gay men who compartmentalize or deny their sexuality. We also get a behind-the-scenes look at Daniel's reporting on the gay MAGA movement and talk about the weird but somehow non-gay homoeroticism that permeates the right under Donald Trump. Before we get started, we wanted to remind you to subscribe to our Substack at christopherstreetmag.substack.com, which is kind of our hub for the show. Blake has been writing some great bonus content on some of the people and themes that we've talked about, and I hope to do that as well as I have more time. If you listen to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please give us a rating or a review, which really helps with the metrics, especially helping new listeners find out about us. So with that more than enough intro, we hope you enjoy our conversation about the messy, sordid spectacle of right-wing gays. All right, boys, we are back. Blake is here, as always, and we are very excited to induct our first friend of the pod. So for the first time, we will be a threesome. Joining us is the writer Daniel Lefferts. Daniel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for. I'm honored to be the first friend of the pod. Wow,
I know Daniel is a very new friend, and we're very excited to have him as our first.
Did y'all meet in a wholesome way? Can I ask? Like you have met IRL, so like
we have met IRL. I would say it was wholesome.
We went to Julius, which David had never been to.
So many firsts, David.
Still, yeah. I still have a few firsts in me, and they're like tame things like that.
Okay, like meth. That's
I had it. Okay, no, I know that I'm not going to have that first. But as we got there, I was like, wait. As I was on the way, I was like, wait, I remember going to some gay dive bar in the Village like very early in my time out of the closet, and maybe it was this, but once we got there, I was like, no, I don't think so. So I would say it was a first.
Yeah, that's
Anyway.
a classy. That's a nice place to meet a Republican gentleman.
Anyway, we should before we get too off track, we should introduce Daniel properly. He is the author of the novel Ways and Means, which, if you want a good novel by a contemporary gay writer, you should check that out. He has written for the Paris Review, the Yale Review, and having recently infiltrated some MAGA gays, has some firsthand experience with what we're going to talk about today, which is the sordid, delicious, messy, tragic spectacle of closeted Republican gays from an era that, really feels like a totally different universe, back when political scandal was still possible.
Right. Many things are similar, but I guess being scandalized is over because, the Kristi Noem boob job husband, that came and went already.
This has probably been the case for a while now, but even outings or gay scandals a few years ago, even a little bit pre-Trump, I feel like they were just kind of a joke. Like it was more people making fun of them than
Rachel Maddow was
looking
for that his tape for nothing. Even if she had found it, what would it have done?
There's been so much has happened since the piss tape. I've already forgotten about that. So much insane shit has happened. Okay, but what are we going to talk about? Someone introduce our article for today.
Okay, well, we have from the issue 67. What is this? August 1982 issue of Christopher Street. The cover story, Sleeping with the Moral Majority. This cutie, question mark, depends on your taste, but he looks very Nick Fuentes, like a slightly older Nick Fuentes. He's like skinny, post-twink. He seems like he's short. He has this kind of short energy and a mustache. I haven't looked up what his height was. That doesn't. I watched
one of his speeches on YouTube just so I could see what he was like as a physical presence, and I think that's correct. I think he looked short. It wasn't well filmed. Didn't have much perspective, but he did look short.
Like more than a foot shorter than Reagan in that one picture.
Yeah. Okay. That explains already a lot about. We haven't yet named him Terry Dolan, a conservative homosexual who was very involved in the founding of CPAC.
It's NCPAC or NICPAC back then. I am not sure if that is like that's one of the things I failed to look up, is if that is like a direct ancestor of
NICPAC. That sounds terrible.
I know it does.
You can see why that didn't last. Somehow CPAC, that has a crispness and it's good branding. But he's a big conservative activist, starting in the mid to late 70s, running through the 80s until his death of AIDS in 1987, 86?
Yeah, around 87, I think.
And this article in Christopher Street that, among other things, outs him is a chapter from this Perry Dean Young book, God's Bullies. And Young is this big gay journalist who had written a book on Leonard Matlovich, who we talked about in a previous episode. This gay Air Force guy who, outed himself and then got kicked out of the military. And then Young
he was also the co-author of the David Kopay biography, or kind of like the Ghost. His name was on it, but he was kind of like the actual writer behind it. So that's where he got famous. But he also covered the Vietnam War. He worked as a kind of regular journalist before. And this book it's like a broader investigative book about the new right in general. And then this excerpt in Christopher Street is the gay chapter from it, in which he outed Terry Dolan, and apparently it was passed around the Reagan administration. And it actually came up online when I was looking for stuff. There are these files in the Reagan Presidential Library where it's just someone's file called this box called homosexuals, and it's all this like intelligence mostly on gay groups. So it's like clippings from gay newspapers and from the Advocate and stuff like that. And then this chapter is just in the middle of it. So I thought that was funny.
I don't know. I mean, they knew what they were doing. This feels very like excerpted as the cover story for an issue of Christopher Street. Feels very like taking the Gaetan Dugas story out of Randy Schultz and the Band Played On, which is like a very small amount of the actual book, but that is for sure the most salacious, exciting. People couldn't click yet, but if they could click, it would have been clickbait.
You will have to explain what that is.
To girls can look up Gaetan Dugas. They don't have to be explained everything.
Okay. All right. Fair. Yeah, it was also apparently not only excerpted in Christopher Street. It was, I think, in the Advocate and a couple of other places as well. But there was a very vibrant gay press at the time, unlike today.
So we've established, I mean, what this article is doing is outing this guy, but what appeals to us in this? What's exciting about it? You, David, like feel like it's a story about how different things are today because we already know, like for instance, Nick Fuentes is into cat boys and it doesn't trouble anyone. It doesn't slow down the machine at all. So you feel like this is what's interesting is the difference between now and then, rather than the persistent homo conservative closeted fascist thing.
I think I would say that, but that's like jumping to conclusions. So I want to talk about the fun stuff in the article. So maybe Daniel, what did you think about? Tell us a little bit about what happens at the beginning.
Now I feel like I'm on like I'm getting quizzed. So it's definitely sort of presented salaciously. We have this like figure who's like well known in DC to like habituate gay parties,
who is some kind of, not named, but some kind of longtime Reagan advisor.
Right. I think like what was sort of interesting to me was just that on the one hand, he was like so able to keep his identity a secret, but he was at the same time like pretty careless. Like he was definitely like out and about at gay parties. He was making himself known, but this seemed to not really be known or acknowledged by, a lot of like whatever, like Falwell and people in the Reagan administration. So it's kind of impressive to me how he was able to lead this double life for a while. But I don't know. I also feel like there's maybe an extent to which people did know and sort of.
Yeah, well, I thought that was weird too, because so it starts out with this like describing these parties of these gays in the Reagan administration, the RPQs, which I think means rich and powerful queens. In another, I can't find where it was now, but in some other book I read, they called themselves the laissez-fairies, which I thought was hilarious. And
right here, they're just the 13 richest fairies.
Yeah,
the laissez-fairies is good. I like that.
Well, so laissez-fairies apparently meant like extreme laissez-faire economists. It was used on them, and then also the gays used it about themselves. But they're throwing these lavish parties. It opens with this kind of anecdote of the Reagan gays having some party, and somebody invites a go-go boy for $200, and the joke is like how little $200 means to any of them. And the guy is like, we did this just to show you that you can still get something good for $200. But yeah, there is this, even in that opening set piece, there is this kind of, this is not, it's not hush hush at all. It's quite out in the open. A lot of these people are married, have children. Maybe some of them didn't, but several of them that do, that are mentioned, have lovers. And so it suggests that like people did know, and it must have been something about the culture of Washington where there was that.
Right. So Dolan notably, like, they profile a couple of other recently scandalously outed older conservative politicians who had the wife and kids and all of that. And Dolan does not, even though he's like early 30s, when this breaks, which is, maybe already a bit suspicious in his circles. I should say the $200, that would be $1,000 in today's money. So I don't know what the rates for a stripper who dances like competently are. I don't know what pays.
Good for you. Good for you for looking that up. Actually, I don't know if it would be a lot more than that now.
I feel like 1,000 is that would be my guess.
Right, 'cause hooker rates actually have not really gone up. Like when I look at like the late 70s, early 80s, it's like a couple $100 a night for like, someone like moderately nice, which like times 4.5 is what it is now. See, one, trickle down works, and two, inflation, not that bad.
We also learned that the hustlers that some of these people frequented, that they were $50, and there was this famous gay hustling outfit in the early 80s that got accused of being a nest of Soviet spying. I don't think it actually was, but
that's why you pay a little bit more. If you bargain, you'll end up with a spy.
Whoever made, because a lot of the boys spoke a bunch of different languages. A lot of the clients were diplomats and foreign people. So I don't think there was actually any spying, but whoever made up the story was clever, because they could have very, very easily had the boys being spies.
I'm sure that will be a series on Netflix soon. It's very heated rivalry coded.
It's very The Americans.
Yeah, it's The Americans. It's that, what's the one like that starts in the 50s and the bottom dies of AIDS and there's the toe sucking? I didn't watch, but
God, what is that? I know exactly what you're talking about. Fellow Travelers.
Fellow Travelers.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
combines, it's everything. Americans, Fellow Travelers, Heated Rivalry.
That would actually fix the Americans for me, because the most boring part of that show is like the heterosexual fan.
There were not homosexuals.
Like I don't care about like the husband, wife, children thing. But if it was just gay, it was just two like sort of like bitchy gay guys living in suburban DC.
That would fix most shows. Netflix.
Or if they were like going after gays, that would be more exciting. I actually just watched the first episode of The Americans recently, because I haven't seen it obviously in a decade, and it has some like honeypot stuff in the pilot, and I was just like, I don't care.
I care when Matthew Rhys is the honeypot.
Who is Matthew Rhys? This is me being
he's the main guy.
Okay. Dad, I don't want to explain who is Gaetan Zuga, but I have to have someone tell me who is Matthew Rhys. So.
He is handsome, but he's often ugly in his disguises.
Yes.
Well, yeah, of course. You shouldn't wear a handsome disguise. That people will be drawn to that. You should disguise yourself as a somewhat unattractive person. Speaking of which, we should post a photo of Terry Dolan for readers to decide for themselves if he's cuter, because I feel like a lot hinges on, is he attractive? Like, how sympathetic are we to him? How much goodwill do we want to extend to this guy? I feel like this is at issue with Nick Fuentes also. It's like, does one find him attractive? What are y'all's thoughts?
Well, that's one reason I wanted to find a video of him or see more than just a photo, so I could see, hear his voice. He has
is he masked? He seems squeaky?
He's a little bit squeaky, kind of maybe kind of like Nick Fuentes. It's not Ben Shapiro mouse voice, but it's
He was doing the sort like, I think he was doing the like flannel and Levi's look. Like he was.
Yeah, he's described at one point in The Young at a bar in a kind of clone adjacent look. So he can like slip out of the Brooks Brothers into, I guess, into flannel top.
Yeah, so it wasn't like quite leather. It definitely wasn't sort of like femme. It was like probably that era's version of like a twonk, like a sort of like young cowboy.
But they don't have yet access to that vocabulary of the twonk. That's interesting. I mean, one thing that we didn't talk about in the gay masculinity episode is like step down from leather in terms of butchness is like the flannel and Levi's. Anyone can like. I wear flannel and jeans, right? Like that's not fooling anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But it's somehow like a skinny post twink can put that on, and it somehow is signaling gayness, but it's not like a dress.
Yeah. I felt like we should do a disclaimer about that episode, and because we should have better distinguished like leather from clones, and clones are part of the broader discussion of gay masculinity, but they're not the same thing as leather bars. And on that note, it's interesting that a lot of people, Holler and White, a lot of people talk about clone style being democratic because like anybody can go buy the stuff at the whatever thrift store they all go to, and
whereas leather is expensive.
But yeah, so I would say I think Dolan is still it's 82, so there's still clones around. Like I think he's probably,
and he's a wood for you,
basically that.
I do think I have to say I think a lot depends on the height.
Oh, you are a heighter?
Elaborate.
Well, because the picture I'm forming is sort of a wood picture, but it involves him being an angry, shortish.
Oh, yeah. I think that.
That's right. Yeah.
If he was like 6 foot and he had this sort of like manic, angry personality, I've
never met someone that tall who was like that.
You're not allowed to have a personality disorder if you're over 5'11".
You're not allowed to have much of a personality. I mean, I love short guys because they're gonna perform. They're gonna put on a show.
Yeah, exactly.
I shouldn't give away all my tips.
I'm getting sort of short king from him.
Now I have this Nick Fuentes comparison in my head. I'm trying to decide if he's like Nick Fuentes or not.
Well, squeaky, short, manic, yeah.
Yeah, he kind of has that Nick Fuentes type voice that is, it's not really effeminate, but it's kind of nerdy. That's what I would say.
I feel like his face probably crumpled a lot when he was sort of vociferating, like.
I feel like he's short but has poor posture. Is that accurate from video, David?
The video quality is not great, so it's kind of hard to tell. He's very energetic. It opens with an extended, I thought this was interesting, extended kind of jokey attack on the Washington Post, which felt very Trumpish to me. It's like it was about.
For those of you who don't know it, they have just changed their format and they have a different layout and different style. It is now not only the most dishonest, it is now the ugliest newspaper in America. But since I don't talk to them, I only give issued statements to my staff and say this is the answer to their question. And invariably it's the same answer, which is I don't talk to the most dishonest newspaper in America, but if I did, I would say this.
Oh yeah, of course. Yes,
the failing New York Times and the lying media and the fake news.
So we haven't explained very much. So I mean, Dolan, born 1950, so he's like 32 at the time of the article. He talks about himself as a born-again Catholic who was radicalized. Now, this I have never heard before. I have never heard someone say this. He was radicalized by Richard Nixon because Nixon was so liberal. He was a big government guy. I'm sure there must have been people like this. He can't have been the only one, but that's a new story for me. So he gets involved in working for the John Birch Society, and he's part of, and I guess both Daniel and David surely have a better grasp on this than me, but in this kind of mid to late 70s fusion of the emerging Christian right and the like old school hard right, which was like not necessarily all about religion, but was like, you know, small government, anti-communism, and which could see Nixon like trying to clean up the air or something as totalitarian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, this story kind of sits at the intersection of those two, because you can kind of see in this crystallization of the new right in the Reagan campaign. I'm going to go on about this because I'm reading Rick Perlstein right now. It's kind of what happens with the new right is these outside groups sort of they think the party is too moderate, it doesn't have any identity, it has no challenge to the New Deal, and so they kind of hijack it from the outside. And this guy Richard Viguerie, who's mentioned in the story, was really good at using these direct mail techniques to create constituencies of single issue voters about whatever he wanted to. And some of them were, fake and conspiracy based. And then they brought all these energies into, a conservative takeover. But those groups don't all agree, and you can kind of see that here. Like there's these more libertarianish ones, which Dolan seems to be, even though he identifies as Catholic and there's these like scenes of him talking about the Bible, he seems to be more of the libertarian type, and he's kind of has this transactional but uneasy relationship with Falwell and the religious right. But yeah, like even the Briggs Amendment, which was a homophobic legislation at the time in the early 80s.
Can you explain what that is?
I can't remember. Don't make me. I learned so many.
I'll just sort of pipe up here and say that this period is also like a really interesting moment in the history of the gay conservative, because it's like the moment when the right fully marries itself to evangelicals, and it becomes harder for gay Republicans to justify their presence in the party.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So and even like the meaning of evangelical is changing, because like during the Carter administration, you can have weirdly gay groups and certain kinds of evangelicals in the White House. Maybe not on the same day, but there's like a certain kind of like center-left Christian piety that Carter can be performing, which isn't necessarily incompatible with like the Equal Rights Amendment, with certain kinds of feminism, with like a certain openness to gay rights. And then all of that is like scrambled by 1980. That evangelical is right-wing, that the Republican Party is about them, but also that they can be in alliance with like the laissez-faire capitalist and with the John Birchers. That's like not at all obvious. And we'll talk in a future episode about like how scary and crazy that seems to a lot of people at Christopher Street, like Chuck Ortlieb. But it makes sense that people maybe, one, don't believe that it's as bad as it is at first, and also then freak out about it in ways that are, in retrospect, counterproductive.
Yeah, so I looked it up since we have the internet right here. The Briggs Initiative was also called Proposition 6 in California. It was kind of like an Anita Bryant-ish, like banning gay school teachers thing. And the reason I mentioned it is because both Reagan and William F. Buckley came out against it for like libertarian reasons. And Reagan said this thing that I thought was a little surprising, and kind of, he's like, what if some kid is just mad at their teacher and wants to get revenge and like decides to say they're gay, and he's like, this would just destroy people's lives for no real reason. And
innocent heterosexuals are hurt by homophobia every day.
That is such strange. I'm struggling to imagine a kid pretending to be gay to get back at us.
No, like accusing the teacher of misconduct.
Okay. I misunderstood. Okay. I was going to say, yeah, that's a really strange thing of him to say, but it's still strange.
But point being that, like, even just a couple of years before this, people who were the leaders of the fusionist right were still kind of taking these libertarian positions that were definitely not Falwell and so there is, Terry Dolan is definitely hypocritical, but there is at least some plausibility or a superficial idea here that they could be working for gays or for gay rights from within the Republican Party, which is historically was not that crazy because, as we know from the Neil Young book, Coming Out Republican, gays were initially attracted to the Republican Party because it was a party of anti-government and they saw government as the main threat to them.
Well, and I don't know like how much to push the analogy between, now and then, but thinking about among like the general population of people who voted for Trump most recently, and the couple of friends that I have who did, their disagreement among themselves about whether like Project 2025 was real, about whether Trump is going to be like super Zionist, about whether Trump is going to be very Christian. I can just imagine that in 1980 people had a similar kind of confusion about like, oh, has Reagan brought in the religious right like to bamboozle them? They're like useful idiots for his, economic kind of laissez-faire small government agenda. Like who's screwing who in the alliance? This could be something that people might have real confusion about.
And from the religious rights perspective, from the perspective of people I grew up with, from my family, the religious right is who was getting screwed. I mean, my parents liked Reagan, but they were not fans of Bush or Bob Dole, and they were. I definitely attended a Pat Buchanan rally as a child. So yeah, I mean, their perspective was like they still always nominate rhinos. They always go run a moderate Republican, and no one's ever actually a conservative, and they never actually do anything about abortion rights. And
so, okay, having said that, Dolan is a key figure in the putting together of this alliance, like in the mid to late 70s. By the early 80s, we haven't mentioned his brother, which, like David, you have all sorts of facts about. But he has an intimate connection to the White House.
I feel like I've been talking a lot. Daniel, do you want to say?
Daniel, do you have the fact?
Do you want to say who his brother is?
His brother's Tony Dolan, is that right?
Yeah,
and he's a speechwriter in the White House. And I don't know if we want to get to he plays a big part in the end of the story. So like an element of this that maybe not super relevant, but it's, like Terry Dolan was a master of was using PACs to support campaigns beyond contribution limits. Like he was sort of a genius.
Which were new at the time, and he was kind of a pioneer of that.
And, like obviously the sort of the central thing with PACs is as long as they don't communicate with the campaign, then they're fine. But he, meanwhile, has a brother in the White House, and his sister also, I think, worked in the White House. So he has like these like intimate family connections to the sort of administration that his PACs are supporting. Anyway, so his brother's a speechwriter, and after Terry's death, his brother tries to redeem his memory in a really kind of sad and insane way with this paid essay. I don't know if you want to take it from there.
Maybe we can talk about that when we, get to it in order. But yeah, so Dolan is kind of this, or Tony Dolan is kind of this, I guess the Young kind of uses him as part of his proof that basically that Terry Dolan is pushing the legal limits of how PACs operate. Has a brother in the White House. He's, meeting with, there's no way that they're not talking to each other. And so that's how he appears.
So she is an innovator. She is at the technological frontier. She's at the legal frontier. Like the mailing list, which like we take for granted, like that really has to be like put to. Yeah, do you have like fresh in your mind, either of you, like the facts about the mailing list as a technology? Because it is like it's politically like really important for conservatives in the 70s, like putting together these like list of hundreds of thousands of people who can be appealed to about abortion, about taxes, but also for gays. Like that's how all of these early gay publications, bookstores, lifestyle products like depend on selling each other list of homosexuals who can be advertised to. So like I don't know if someone has done a monograph yet on like the mailing list in the 70s and 80s, but it's actually really important for constituting like political constituencies and these kind of pseudo-ethnic communities. And then, yeah, Dolan is playing at this, and he's playing with the PACs, which now are like very, very important to our politics, but which at the time were like new, and it's unclear what you can get away with. And, you know, gays love pushing boundaries.
He was very scrupulous. He did that sort of reverse bribe with a politician where he, like, you know, promised to withhold negative advertising if he...
A reverse bribe is so smart because you don't have to spend any money.
Exactly. And also, I think the thing with the reverse bribe, the politician's name escapes me, but he brought it to some judicial body to complain, and with a reverse bribe, like, no money has changed hands, so like no bribe actually took place. So
this is like the big brain version of like your sibling not hitting you, you know, like oh, what do you? I'm not hitting you. I'm not hitting you. My hand is just floating above your face.
He was a political machinator, you know, like he knew which boundaries to get very, very close to and what he could get away with.
And the story sort of uses a contrast between him as this kind of very brash, you know, he goes on TV all the time and he says these brash things. He'll even call out Reagan to his face and, you know, say he's not conservative enough. And Tony Dolan, by contrast, is a behind-the-scenes figure. He's a speechwriter. You know, I think speechwriters should be seen and not heard. He's a sort of... I saw he has lots of bylines in the National Review in, you know, a decade or more before this. And apparently also, the story tells us, forces any girl he dates to subscribe to National Review.
Hot. Great.
Which is extremely sexy. Extremely sexy.
You know, the film content remains great. Love their movie reviews.
At least he thinks women should read. That's an improvement on some corners.
They should just have it in the house in case a man comes over.
We have to give him credit where it's due.
But it's very Nick Fuentes, very Tucker Carlson, where like, you know, I am critical of the president, right? Because he's not killing enough people of color, or he's killing the wrong ones or whatever. But yeah, like the combination of being a consummate insider, like, you know, knowing what kind of media manipulation to do, what kind of legal manipulation, but in addition to having like great private connections, also having this public persona of independence, outspokenness. That's a great combination.
Yeah, and he's a quintessential one of the, you know, historian framings of understanding the new right is that they were a radical or revolutionary movement as opposed to a conservative one. And Dolan really embodies this. Like he's very much a norm breaker, like, you know, very, very proudly and openly, like, I don't care what the norms are. I don't care, like, you know, I'm not going to be nice to you. I'm not here to make friends, you know. And that was what a lot of these groups were like. I mean, someone brought up women, and I wanted to, what did you guys think of this part where...
Was there a woman in this article?
This quote where Dolan says, he talks about the Republican women being ugly. You ever been to a Republican meeting? Ugliest women in America. No, that's not true. The second ugliest women in America after the Democratic convention.
This is somehow an answer to the question of whether or not he's gay. Like what he brings this up because, like, of course I have to suck cock.
Yeah, this is when. So we should say the author of the book that this is excerpted from knows that Dolan is everybody. All journalists seem to know that Dolan is gay. Young knows people who have, you know, has gay friends who have slept with him. He's been, I don't know if he says that he personally saw him, but Dolan is seen around. Like, everybody knows he goes to the Eagle. He goes to like steam rooms at the gym. And so it's an open secret. And then the pivotal scene that broke news and made this, you know, the most important chapter of the book is that he goes to interview Dolan and eventually like confronts him. They talk through a bunch of issues and positions, but also, you know, eventually confronts him with the question of whether he's gay or not. But yeah, this is the part where he's kind of running through Dolan's positions on stuff, and he's talking about, so he's also around this time, like, just weirdly, I think the rest of the new right thinks it's kind of weird. Paul Weyrich, who is, you know, super homophobic, is not a fan of him constantly giving interviews to the Advocate and the Village Voice. So he's going in these gay, you know, giving interviews to these gay newspapers and saying like, oh yeah, like I'm sorry for that nasty fundraising letter that we sent out. Yes, I believe that gays should have like discrimination protection. And then all the Washington Post and all the newspaper is like, new right guy comes out for
J.D.
gay
Vance
rights.
says moral gays will not be affected.
And then he has to go back to his groups and be like, I didn't say that, and I apologize to Jerry Falwell for it. And so it's this constant dance back and forth between, what he actually thinks.
And I actually found that part of the piece quite poignant, because it really creates a portrait of someone who's kind of backed himself into a corner and is just sort of panicking and kind of losing the thread of what he believes or is supposed to believe. And I just feel like this is kind of the moment when his contradictions start to become untenable.
So, okay, I don't know if David, you decided this is too early yet for this or not, but what I find really fascinating is not so much this person himself, Dolan, but Young, and we haven't mentioned Young tracks down this guy who has had sex with Dolan, Richard Anderson, who was a information specialist at the Library of Congress Copyright Office and was alive at least in the late 90s. I did some Googling, so doesn't seem to have died of AIDS. So good on you, Richard Anderson. But both Young and Anderson, and it sounds like Daniel, have a certain there's a certain poignancy, oh no, you're trapped in your contradictions.
A poignancy is not sympathy necessarily, but
right. It's not being in favor of or identification with, but there is Young very much stages in this chapter. He doesn't initially want to confront Dolan. He's dragged into it. He does feel this is someone who's really caught up in these contradictions, has painted himself into a corner. And yeah, I'm interested in that, right? Because one could say this guy is just an insane creep, or they're all like that. But somehow there's something that gets us going further.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask Daniel, when you were talking about this, this moment where he just seems to be kind of all over the place, and I think you say rightly, his contradictions start to show. Obviously, that has to do when he's responding to the questions about whether he's gay and the gossip that Young brings up. But do you think what do you think about that? Is some of that ideological as well, that he is this high profile figure who's trying to hold together a coalition? And maybe, I think I came away maybe after a couple of reads feeling like he actually was a libertarian and more of a social libertarian, and wanted to. He apparently helped kind of behind the scenes, helped Bob Bauman, who's this other Republican congressman who was arrested for soliciting a gay hustler and was outed. He helped him found a gay Republican group. So it does seem like he kind of wanted to go that direction, but he was just having to have lunch with Jerry Falwell every week.
I mean, it seems possible to me that a contradiction as big as, he has the contradiction of being a homosexual in a homophobic party, but I think another contradiction he's facing is that between a sincere libertarianism and all the compromises he's having to make as his party becomes more and more wedded to an evangelical right that has very sort of, in some ways, very sort of big government instincts. And I'm not sort of falling in love with him in the article, but I think what's poignant to me is that he does not seem in control of the story anymore.
That's how bottoms manipulate you. One is they seem out of control. That's how they get control.
He's definitely giving sort of his short, mentally unstable.
Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just a little guy.
But I just thought it was a well-rendered moment in the essay as well.
Yeah. So there's this part. There's also this part which I thought was one of the funniest lines in the story, where he's describing his kind of back and forth with the other gay journalists. And this very much captures him losing the story. And then he did one more curious thing. He granted another interview to Larry Bush, who is a gay journalist, on the subject of homosexuality, this time for an article in the Village Voice of April 20th, 1982. This article, without answering the question, was all about whether Terry Dolan is or is not gay. The main source was, incredibly, Terry Dolan himself.
Right. I mean, there's contradictions, but there's a kind of self-destructiveness, or there's an enjoyment. We've already mentioned an enjoyment of pushing boundaries, but I didn't follow George Santos closely enough, but Santos seemed to love flying too close to the sun. I mean, he was asking to be burned.
I think there's also a little bit of like a Steve Bannon flood the zone.
Oh, yeah.
Here, like, you know, if you put out enough like contradictory signals, just no story materializes. And that seems to be kind of like maybe just instinctively
keep leaking weird nudes. Don't like one is one weird nude is a scandal. 1,000 weird nudes.
If you bury people in them. Yeah, and it seemed to have worked. Like he doesn't actually seem to have, like what eventually brought him down was, you know, being sick from AIDS, not, you know, it wasn't that he was, oh, it's true. Paul Weyrich does, you know, he's like, everybody's talking about this and this is not cool. You know, you need to cut it out. But, you know, other Republicans are quoted being like, as long as he's doing his ideological mission, we don't care.
Right. In some ways, it's like we get disappointed when we try to out one of them and then they don't care. Right? Like we expect them to be consistently homophobic and, you know, to punish the people we out. But that does not work necessarily.
Which Young has this kind of, I thought this part was a bit melodramatic where he's going in to interview Dolan and he's like, am I going to confront him or not? And I'm just thinking about this Nazi guy who like told the New York Times he was gay and then shot himself, and what if he kills himself? And you know, that kind of keeps coming back. Also, to side note, like the gays just cannot stop talking about Nazis and like comparing themselves to like Nazis in concentration camps in this era.
Did that Nazi? I think he was worried that people would reveal that he was Jewish.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I knew I was going to mess something up there because
like the Jewish, which becomes the basis for this early Ryan Gosling movie, the title of which I'm forgetting, but Ryan Gosling is a Jewish Nazi,
perfectly cast in that role.
He was born to play. I don't remember it being a good film, but he was already handsome. So
right.
So just to sort of finish out the scene of the confrontation in Dolan's office, he denies that he's gay, obviously, but he's very interested in who said that he was, and he wants Young to tell him like, who are these people and what are they saying? What parties did they say I went to? And then they kind of walk out. And so this is what he says, kind of wrapping up. He says, that afternoon I worried, this is referring back to his fear about the Jewish Nazi. That afternoon I worried that the confrontation might have caused him to do himself in the men's room and never go back to his double life. It also crossed my mind that he might send somebody out to take care of me, also super melodramatic. But no, I thought, he is not a man to face up to anything. Like Bauman, he had obviously not thought about what he would do if his homosexuality was disclosed, because he has lived in two worlds as separate as darkness and light, and when he was in one, the other didn't exist.
I mean, I love that. That's absurd. Am I going to get killed for publishing this? This is how brave I am.
When I read that part about how he was afraid he'd go into the bathroom and kill himself, I assumed he was thinking of the film Advise and Consent.
Explain.
One of the characters in that film is a closeted gay politician who eventually kills himself in a bathroom in a government building. I was like,
are they in Dolan's home? Are they in a restaurant where like, because like to kill yourself in like a restaurant bathroom?
Why did I assume
they're in his office for when they're doing the interview?
Describes his office as not having like any...
Okay, yeah. I mean, killing yourself in your office is very traumatic. I love that.
I feel like I should take the opportunity to say that I never get movie references, but I'm going to blame my evangelical childhood. You know, I had...
What, y'all had VeggieTales?
No access to culture.
I have to recommend Advise and Consent, if only because it...
Oh, I do know what that is.
It's a great gay storyline.
Yeah, so that is actually earlier in the Jamie Kirchick book. We should mention that. Like, I'm taking a lot of context here from James Kirchick's book Secret City, which is a very long history of gay Washington, and it's also like a quite beautifully written book. Highly recommended if you're interested in kind of the Cold War, the Lavender Scare, you know, gay political scandals. And there's a part about Advise and Consent, the novel itself, and then the movie and its impact on gay Washington. So I do know what that is.
Kirchick is great because he can be like a screaming Larry Kramer type polemicist, but absolutely turns that off in the book. I don't know how.
Speaking of YouTube videos, I also found a video of Larry Kramer talking about Terry Dolan, and it's from some unnamed, you know, it's super sketchy, some unnamed documentary. I could not find the source of it, but it's a short clip, and he's like, I saw Terry Dolan at a party, and you know what I did? I threw a drink in his face.
And this is a man who's raising money to kill us, Terry Dolan. And I went to a cocktail party in Washington, and there he was. And I threw a drink in his face. I said, how dare you come to a party of gay people after what you're doing to us?
Okay, well, with a grain of salt, let's take that one.
Although it is mentioned in this story that, there is a scene that features Larry Kramer kind of, shouting him down at a party and saying, like, why shouldn't we out you, basically? So, Blake, you wanted to talk about one of the things that interest you is what we've been talking about the last few minutes, the way that the journalist frame builds this up in his mind. And like he kind of has this melodramatic idea of this intervention that he's going to do. And I think, from in a journalistic sense, I think he saw it as he had to get this on the record. He had to confront Dolan with this information and sort of was aware that it would break news and also aware that like outing people was kind of, it was iffy in terms of ethics. Like that debate among gay activists didn't really come along for a few more years. So I think it was all that, but he definitely does kind of set this melodramatic scene in his head and the way he describes it. And would be interesting to talk about like the way that we think about people in the closet or like outing them or, what it's supposed to accomplish. Are we sorry for them or do we sort of hate them? And
so, yeah, I mean, on the one hand, there's the kind of like ethics and politics of outing where Jung is thinking about like, does this even work as a tactic? Is this going to do anything? Which is interesting because like it is way ahead of like Michelangelo Signorile in the late 80s and early 90s or what's his face at Gawker, like in the 2010s, outing people right and left. Already Jung is thinking like, is this even going to work? Are actually conservative voters or elites consistently homophobic enough or non-hypocritically homophobic enough for this to even do something like tactically? But there's also a kind of like personal or psychological dimension where he's like, if I confront this compartmentalized, self-hating, whatever divided kind of person with the different pieces of his life and say, look, how does it fit together? There's this scene in Faggots where like the father is like he wants to produce like a gay film, like Fathers and Sons and Brothers and Lovers or whatever. And he's asking some Hollywood producer for the money to do this, who he knows is gay and in the closet. And the producer is like, well, I don't think there's really an audience for this. I don't know. Hollywood's not ready. And he's like, but you are a faggot. And I think there's the wish that when we say that, just like, oh, but aren't you a homosexual? That like the pieces will come together. They'll be like, oh no, I've been living in the wrong way. I have to change my life.
Or they've just been waiting for someone to ask.
Yeah. Like they haven't put it together. They haven't done the 2 + 2 = faggot yet. But we can get them there, and this will be great. We'll save them or destroy them. I don't know. There's kind of an ambivalent charge to it. But yeah, Dolan is not having that.
I think there's a way in which Dolan is perfectly comfortable with like his version of homosexuality. Like the portrait that comes across is of a man who understands himself.
So you think she is not a house divided?
Well, I think he lives with like incredible contradictions and like I think like there's probably like a mounting panic involved as like more and more people try to out him and more rumors circulate around him. But I sort of feel like he gets to be gay and then he gets this life in this political party that he enjoys. And I think it's like a trade-off that he accepts but doesn't really understand the untenability of.
So there's this thing at the beginning actually where Jung speculates on the pleasure that such a person might have, where like the pleasure of getting away with it, the pleasure of being smarter than other gays who have to be publicly out, who have to toe the party line. And it made me wonder if Tony Kushner hadn't read this when he's writing that great monologue for Roy Cohn in Angels in America, which is how like, you are a homosexual, you're a loser, no one takes your phone calls. I can talk to the president anytime I want. And whether or not like that's real in like this person, I have no idea what Dolan is like, but there is something like, in the vein of like making up a type of guy to be mad at, there's something delicious to be mad at the kind of guy who is getting away with that. Like that has a real appeal in the homosexual imagination.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because I was just about to suggest we read this part from the beginning because I think it kind of connects to something that's in Daniel's GQ piece. He has a paragraph that's kind of doing similar work, I think. So he says this toward the beginning of the piece before he's even introduced Dolan, and he's talking about the power gaze of the Reagan Revolution. Like the women, Jews, or blacks who succeeded in spite of societal attitudes about their kind, these men have a stake in preserving their own oppression. They don't see it as oppression at all. They see it as privilege conferred on them because they are special. If other homosexuals suffer from oppression, then they deserve it because they are so weak or just not clever enough.
Yeah. Bitchy.
So, I mean, do you want to talk about the GQ piece? Do you want to?
Yes, I want to talk about that. Do we want to talk about the ending or the hookup with Rob Anderson at all? Do we have anything else to say about that?
So both in the show notes and in this, you have confused him with Rob Anderson of the gay science videos from years back. I don't know what she's doing now.
Wait, what is his actual name?
I think Richard Anderson.
Okay.
Which is his real name, weirdly enough. So Richard Anderson is like, don't say what government department I work for, but use my real name.
That whole story of him not really being sure that it was Terry Dolan is just, I mean, this is just a small note, but it's like, it just shows how blurry television was back then. Because I have hard to believe. And then I was like, oh, right. Like, there really could be some ambiguity. Like, is this the person I've seen on TV?
This is a good, high definition has been hard for DL guys. Where that's your next article. You should, the unsung stories of guys who got, the cheating CEO on the Jumbotron, that couldn't have happened in 1980. The technology wasn't there.
There's a lot of modern day Blanche Dubois type gays who want to bring back
VHS, bring back indirect lighting. Also, Blanche Dubois was 36, so that's something I think about every day.
Well, how long ago was that written? I feel like life expectancy, especially in the South, was.
Life is longer and lighting is harsher. So the news keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
But wait, do we want to talk about Richard Anderson?
Okay, Richard Anderson. They meet at the Eagle, I think. They meet at the Eagle. They're instantly attracted to each other. They're both dressed kind of the same way, if I remember correctly, kind of in this clone outfit. And they go back to an apartment that Terry Dolan recently moved into. They have sex, and he kind of is thinking all along, I think I've seen this guy on TV before. And then he sees the Nick Pack stationery on the table. This reminds me of when I went to the house of a gay person that I sort of acquaintance and had no idea what his job was. And he had APAC business cards.
And you fumbled that bag.
So he's still, even when he sees that, he's like, he doesn't put it together. He's like, oh, I hope that's not who you work for. And Dolan's like, yeah, it is. And he's like, I don't really care. I'm not political. And then he asks his last name. And Dolan tells him, which I think that's a revealing moment too. It's like, he's not being careful at all. Like he's got his job, laying around in the open. He says his last name. He's not actually being super DL.
On the subject of gay conservatives and the men who sleep with them, I have to say Richard's sort of about face is just it's just a gem of an example of, I think, how a lot of people deal with conservative gays that they're attracted to. It's like, I hope that's not who you work for. Oh, it is? I don't care. I'm not political.
Right. I mean, that's a great switch. It feels like it could be. This is some White Lotus kind of dialogue. I don't know whether that makes it feel more realistic or more made up by Young. But I mean, certainly all women I know are my husband is not Republican. No. So they've been doing that for thousands of years. Why shouldn't gays?
Okay, well since we read that part of the essay where he's talking about how the Reagan gays see that, they don't really see that themselves as oppressed at all. They're invested in, what other gays or left-wing gays would call their oppression, but they see it as privilege, and it's a form of superiority. The fact that they are passing for straight, they're amassing power, and they're this close to the president, and they're, getting away with it. They see that as a sign of distinction and privilege. So Daniel, when was the story that you it came out well before the New York Times A gay story about the actual gay men in the Trump administration. You visited a log cabin Republicans party for GQ, and when was this?
So I think that party was actually, it was a Christmas party, and then I published, so in late 2024, and then I published it in, I think, February, like after inauguration.
So, right. So, okay, this was like a post-election thing.
Yeah.
And actually, before we talk like about the themes, I was just curious, like what you thought as as an observer. I want the behind the scenes. The New York Times reporter Sean McCreesh just did a behind the scenes interview of his reporting about. He's the one who wrote the A gay story, and he also wrote a story about Kristi Noem. Everyone in her hometown.
Homosexual? Like what's his deal?
He is. So he was on the ground already in Kristi Noem's hometown, reporting on her husband, unrelated to the scandal, the day it broke. And so he turned it into a story about everyone in her hometown's reactions to it, how they all kind of felt sorry for him, which is another difference from, or I guess some of the voters of some of the constituents of these gay congressmen, were a bit sympathetic and like even reelected them. So maybe the voters have never been as bad as the party operatives. But anyway, so I want to do that kind of behind the scenes interview with you. So you live in New York, you've been to gay parties. You've seen the spectrum of rich gays in New York. How did this one feel? Like, did it seem like mostly the same type of people? Was there like a vibe in the air that was different? How did you feel about it? So
it was at a very fancy penthouse on the Upper West Side that was sort of donated for the evening to the log cabin Republicans of New York City by, I think, a straight couple, friends of the gays,
allies,
and so it was sort of an upscale, generally vibe. The look was business casual, preppy. I would say the age range was like 60s to late 20s. And Andrea, I always mispronounce this last name, Andrea Katzimatidis was there. Rob Smith is really prominent gay MAGA influencer. He was there.
This OnlyFans boy, Michael Dougherty.
Oh, no, he wasn't there. Who is the...
right. I was going to ask you if he was actually there, but you did interview him.
Who was the Advocate editor who turned into a big MAGA? Chadwick. Anyway, former Advocate editor Chadwick Moore was there. So it was like a sort of it was a hoity-toity crowd. And in addition to that party, I interviewed some sort of influencers, I guess you'd say, who just were kind of megaphones of the gay MAGA coalition leading up to the 2024 election. So that was this guy named Tyler Foz, who's on Twitter. He's Tough Talk Ty. And then this guy named Sean Fahey and Michael Dougherty, who he's probably the least political of all, but he's definitely like not really doing political content anymore. But he's sort of like an OnlyFans.
Mm-hmm. And not the only one. There's a couple of MAGA OnlyFans boys.
I guess, to be fair, OnlyFans was owned by that, like, insane Zionist child pornographer. So that sort of fits perfectly.
Oh, I have heard that.
Yeah. You could actually write a whole separate article about all the gay porn stars that are MAGA. There's a few.
To me, that is not surprising because, like, what are the type of people that do that? And, like, the places they live, they're in Florida, they're in Arizona, wherever, they're products of their environment. So that doesn't surprise me at all.
Also, like, if they're like successful, they're sort of like, they're like kind of like wealthier, self-employed people.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, they're like boat owner coded, they're entrepreneurs.
They're petty-bourgeois. Yeah.
They're getting pummeled at tax season. It makes sense.
I don't know if this is actually the default, but like, I've been looking like, I love LPSG and like tracking what happens to former OnlyFans performers. I think a lot of them become realtors.
Right.
And that's like a Florida realtor. Of course, you're a MAGA.
Right.
Right. 100%.
So I don't know if I did like a good enough sort of behind the scenes of my piece, but
I guess I was wondering like how it compared it's a somewhat formal event, so it's not like a gay, a circuit gay pre-game or something like that, but I was just wondering if it felt like the same, people looked the same as that, or like it compared.
Something The party was like noticeably devoid of eroticism. And I think there's like a couple.
So not even doing as well as the 1980s gays.
Part of it was that you were in a straight couple's house and they were there. And then like Andrea Katzimatidis was there. Like it was like the adult, like there were like adults in the room, so to speak.
Right.
It was also daytime.
Wait, what hour was this?
I think it started around 2 and went till 6. So it was like,
Oh, okay.
The core of it was like early evening. Charles Moran was there, who was at the time the log cabin national president. He now has some other sort of sinecure in the administration. So it did not. I left before it ended, but I am confident it did not descend into an orgy or ascend into an orgy.
Okay, so my God, I guess I had in my mind both conflated this with your thing about your year of dating finance bros.
Oh yeah,
and then conflated both of these with Young. Young has a kind of like himself and via Anderson, an erotic investment, I think, of some kind in his subject. So I'd have thought Daniel Lefferts also is, some way like horny for MAGA guys, but which is, no judgment. But right, this sounds like a very unlibidinal experience.
Well, I do want to ask you about your investment in these, because you say even in the piece that like you're fascinated by these guys. You had kind of like started following Milo Yiannopoulos when he was doing his Dangerous Faggot tour. So I wanted you to talk about that, like how that came about, or what place that comes from, or how you feel about that, consuming that content.
I mean, it's hard to talk about this without sort of stepping in it, because
step in it. That's
that's why we're here.
That's what this is for.
I did become interested in Milo Yiannopoulos, and I think something that was really interesting to me about him was that he felt like a gay from the past in a lot of ways. There was something sort of Oscar Wildean about him. There was something kind of Christopher Hitchensy about him. He was extremely provocative. He had an acid tongue. I felt at that time that I couldn't remember the last time I'd been around a gay guy with like a really acid tongue, like with a really sharp wit and with a sort of sparkling menace. And I think those qualities all describe the 2015 era Milo Yiannopoulos. I think he's changed.
Yeah. I remember seeing photos of him. What was his gender presentation like that? This is on my mind because we were talking about
at that time.
Yeah.
I think are we talking like sort of like, was he a man?
Well, like, how did he dress, or did he have the
dye job? Was he blonde?
He was flamboyant.
I'm just wondering if he like played up his like effeminacy or faggotry as part of like a defiant, stance, or
there was definitely like a queeniness. I mean, I seem to remember pictures of him wearing like pearl necklaces, I think, and like maybe like coats with like some fur situation.
Which now every straight frat guy does. So good on you, Milo, for bringing that back. It has replaced the puka necklace.
25-year-olds working at Deloitte are wearing pearl necklaces,
living in Milo's shadow,
on dates with their girlfriends. But so I guess like I found him very entertaining, and I guess a question for me at that time was like, was there something about far right politics that had like activated this way of being gay that seemed to be waning? And again, like, I'm stepping in it because like, I'm making really broad generalizations, but it was,
I don't think that's off track though, because there has been, I don't think it's like a big phenomenon or anything, but there have certainly been people who are trying to make that happen. So make a kind of, even if it's not explicitly MAGA or right wing, a kind of like dime square, like decadence, like that kind of stuff it's sort of ambivalent or even hostile to gay identity. And it's, hearkening back to some kind of previous, perhaps closeted, but more effeminate, decadent, Wildean style.
Like, I don't think gay men really ever became any stars of the dime square scene, but like gay men absolutely love Dasha Nekrasova. Like I think something similar was going on there.
Well, right, I think I've complained to David. I'm continually surprised by like gay guys I meet who in their public presentation like have like nice corporate or art world jobs, and who find things that I say in print like bad, but who love Red Scare, who love Perfume Nationalist, who love like things that to me are like, this is like straight up MAGA chud, like Nazi garbage. But if you can enjoy it from a little bit of distance, then it's like, you know? And I do think there's a kind of, I mean, to me, like Milo is like, that's exactly how all gay guys are in my mind. Like that is what being a gay guy is like, you know, you get too real at Thanksgiving, you get a little drunk, you know, you say something, you know, off color. Like when he got canceled the first time for being like, oh yeah, I got felt up by a priest and I loved it. That to me is like, that's very normal.
I think
like
that's something like I've had more black men in me than a Kardashian or something like
that.
Yeah,
that's like, come on, that's like RuPaul season 3. That's just a normal way for gay guys to joke. But I think people in a certain like lanyard wearing corporate sphere or in academia like get cut off from that. And I am surprised like continually by meeting like sort of good boy eunuch gays who like don't get to joke that way. And yeah, I mean, I would love to make the case that like you can be a classic gay guy and not Hitler. That would be my public service announcement.
Yeah, and you know, and like just on that point, I will say one of my sources for that article was a publicist who decided to remain anonymous. So you know, I'm not going to say his name, but he, you know, he said there was something. I didn't quote everything he said, but I think he's kind of said this in other outlets. I think he said something like MAGA is today's MTV. There's
oh yeah, they love to do it. Conservatives are the new punk rock. Like,
and I honestly feel like that felt true as recently as early 2025. And so I think his point was that appealed more to gay men than sort of like middle class Taylor Swift Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and maybe that connects to the Red Scare stuff too, because I would even go so far as to say like not just good boys, but even very woke, you know, gay left people think much more so than I am, like listen to Red Scare and post it on their close friends, and I'm like, you really?
I mean, it was one of the most humiliating moments in my life was like a few, you know, some years ago, like I think in this thing I wrote about Bronze Age pervert for Tablet, which of course is, you know, completely evil, but it was discussed like at some length, or the Andrew Long Shoe thing was discussed at some length on Red Scare. And all of these gay guys that I knew who I thought better of were texting me to say like, oh, you know, I heard you, like they're talking about you on Red Scare. Like, and like, girl, this is terrible that you listen to this. Like what? Like I feel like, yeah, like gayness should mean that you have some access to transgression and to a certain like ability to be flip. And it's weird how like so many gay guys outsource that to the worst people imaginable.
Yeah, and like, you know, this was a piece of journalism, and like what we read for today's episode were, you know, it's just straightforward journalism history. So it's hard to get into this, but like you know, because if you ask these men like why, you know, because these are like the men I was talking to are not just sort of Red Scare listeners. Like they're like going to like, you know, CPAC and stuff like that. Like they're like,
yeah, they're actual Republicans. Yeah. And
if you ask them, like, you know, what brought you to conservative politics, like they have their answers. And, you know, today, a lot of Republican gay men are really put off by, you know, the trans portion of the queer community, and but they love low taxes, they like guns, like they have all these talking points, but I just kind of always have this like suspicion that there is something perverse in their attraction to it, and I think it's hard for them to articulate, and it's hard to project that onto them if they're not going to sort of supply it. It's like something that can be explored maybe in like fiction.
I mean, the perversity, you know, we need to find more wholesome outlets for homosexual perversity. That's what we need. That's
well, I was gonna say in relation to Red Scare, it's this kind of, at least a couple of these people maybe that you interviewed are going purely on vibes, and it's like, oh, this is the cool thing. This is the counter-normative or transgressive thing to be doing right now. And, you know, the Democrats are lame and we have bad vibes. And so they're enjoying this stuff or aligning themselves with it without any real like political understanding. But you make a very good point that like Terry Dolan was a true conservative ideologue, and so are some of these people.
And I think Republican politics offers like actually two things that like are historically attractive to gay men, which are like transgression, but also a sort of like spick and span, anal retentive sense of like pomp and circumstance. Like, you know, it's the party of transgression for them, and then it's also the party of like handsomeness and suits and orderliness.
Right. Yeah, well, I think maybe even Peter Thiel is an example of this. As in college, he's one of these new right college activists. He's like the Dinesh D'Souza of Stanford. Like he founds this super controversial, confrontational conservative newspaper, which, you know, rich donors were funding all over the country. They publish, you know, terrible stuff about everybody, including, you know, homophobic stuff about gays. But it's almost like the new right offers like a kind of transgression or being bad on behalf of order and normativity or something like that. Which
now,
is like what?
To be fair, the left in the last several years has also offered this combination in the most appealing version. But like, you can be like, in defense of riots, raise the crime rate, you know, burn down the Wendy's, whatever, and I will get you fired for your microaggression at work. I mean, the combination, like, and that is, I think, a very American appeal. Is like, you want to be a free rebel, but also, what if I could crush my enemies?
Well, it's actually like, in a way, it's a reverse, and I actually think the not gay way to combine those traits, because what they're offering is a sort of aesthetic. I don't know, like that, like there's sort of a less defined aesthetic there, but there's like a moral orderliness, where it's like, I think like a lot of gay men want like transgression and like a sort of like coherent, rigid aesthetic.
Oh yeah. Although, you know, we didn't circle back to like, are Republican women ugly? And, you know, maybe this can be toward the conclusion, but it made me wonder, like, Republicans somehow have gotten their finger on aesthetics, or the idea of, like, the New York Times ran this very like crazy thing a few months ago on like the MAGA body, and like, can Hassan Piker be the left's alternative? And like, Republicans are ugly. Like I like, my family is in Memphis. I have to go back regularly. MAGA voters like look disgusting. Even Clavicular knows it, but they have somehow generated a narrative about this. But it made me wonder, like, okay, if Dolan in 1982 is saying Republican women are ugly, I guess the plastic surgery look, like the Mar-a-Lago face, is not yet on them. And then what can the Dems do to get the aesthetics?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a very strange story that's taken hold, because it just does not square with reality as we all experience it.
Okay, what with the gays that you met at this party, you said it was unerotic. Also, were they ugly? What was the face card?
Let me put it this way. If I were there for different reasons, I would have left sooner.
Okay. So yeah, my misreading of you as having an erotically charged fascination with the darkness of the MAGA heart. This is not...
Well, as you know, the erotic charge does not necessarily need reality too.
It's also like, right, if porn are based on reality, you know, plumbers are not hot, construction worker is not that hot.
And yet, you know, and like it lives on even when reality disappoints. But yeah, I mean, it's and I think like reading this piece in Christopher Street just kind of made me realize that, like, or just made me think about how like there's like this weird fixation right now on the gayness of MAGA that has nothing to do with homosexuality, really. Like the actual gay men in MAGA are like Scott Besson, who's very hard to get interested in as a person.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Oh, yeah, he doesn't light people up at all. Yeah,
Right. I could not. I thought like maybe I should have a joke about Scott Besant, but you can't.
What would the joke be? Yeah.
He's very paper pushery, you know, and but like people sort of are really invested in this idea that there's like something like homoerotic about, like, you know, Pete Hegseth, like, you know, like
there's nothing gayer than beating your wife.
And so it's like I feel like today we're still searching paranoidically for like the gays in the Republican Party, but because the gays themselves are uninteresting, like we're searching for like a gayness. But it does seem to be this recurring feature of like how people engage with the right.
And it does, I mean, it really does. I think someone sort of says this in the article, but really the gayest thing about MAGA is Trump, and he's not gay.
Right.
I think there's something beautiful that people still think of gayness in association with this kind of discursive freedom and the ability both to tell it like it is and to make shit up. And, you know, gays are pretty alienated from these two capacities, but, you know, I keep wishing for, like, Buttigieg to tap into the fabulating queen.
Well, and like on the Democratic side, I think Gavin Newsom is so much gayer than Pete Buttigieg.
Oh, yeah. Well, in the way that, you know, I've heard it said that only two straight men could write Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, because in the same way that the straight guys in the locker room could touch each other's butts in a way that we would have been afraid to. Sad.
Right. And there's sort of like in Democratic like comms, there's like a big sort of effort to like capture like the gay Twitter audience. So you have all these like political accounts talking in gay slang. Like I think today, like...
Oh, I saw something about that in the past couple of weeks. Like, did they have like a gay 20-year-old writing her tweets?
100%. Today, the Twitter account for New York State.
Yes, I saw this right before we started.
I'm not on Twitter. I did not see this, so someone please explain.
Go ahead.
So the Twitter account for New York State, it was tweeted something about potholes, and I think the tweet was it's hole filling season. So it's just like I guess the point I'm working my way toward is that like gayness has like permeated our political culture, but like the gays themselves are not really there to like hold it up. Like we have like Scott Besson, Pete Buttigieg.
Right. They don't need us anymore.
Right.
Or even the clavicular stuff. Like there's been a bunch of talk about that. Like he's bringing this body modification, this like looks obsession, and all these things that Fire Island gays have been doing for decades and making it into this cultural thing. But it's
once Grindr's gay AI finishes scraping all conversations, then straight people really won't need us anymore. They can get rid of us.
Well, I guess we will have achieved the great dream of the gay liberation people to just dissolve us into a generalized homosexual, a generalized, you know, queerness or.
It's very Donna Haraway
or whatever.
Yes.
And just like one more thing I'll say about that is, you know, like on the right, you know, there's that whole very bizarre strain of rhetoric from the likes of like Andrew Tate and Nick Fuentes that like having sex with women is gay. And then you have someone like Bronze Age Pervert who
just is a homosexual. So that's less.
He's become much more forward about like worshiping the male physique in his online presence, and he just wrote this very bonkers essay in some Substack only publication about how to like reverse the fertility crisis. We need to have a culture that like valorizes male sexuality, and
gay sex will fix the fertility crisis. That's a galaxy brain one. I love him. He's another person where being ugly or being kind of ugly is really important to explaining how it all fits together.
Right. And so it's just like you just think about someone like Terry Dolan being teleported to today. His party is absolutely steeped in homoeroticism, but it's not gay, you know.
R.I.P. Terry Dolan, you would have loved, Bronze Age Pervert. You would have thought.
I feel like he would have thrived in the environment, though, because he's like a precursor of it.
Yeah, he couldn't. If only she had been in the prep era. Pour one out for a real one.
Well, guys, we have gone an hour and a half. Should we...
Yeah, I am clearly out of brain cells. But Daniel, do you have a plug for? You have another book in the works. You have a product to.
I don't have anything to plug. I mean, I'm toiling away at a second book, but it's not plug.
Well, stay tuned.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm still alive and working. That's my plug.
You have your personal brand to plug.
Yes. Hopefully, I've said nothing to damage it.
Well, that's great. You can be a podcast guest in the meantime. It's good that you have free time to be a podcast guest in the meantime. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. This was super fun.
Thank you for having me.
And we will see you all next time.
Bye.